Welcome to the League of Extraordinary Storytellers, the podcast that takes you inside the dynamic world of themed experience design. I'm your host, Theron Skees. In each episode, I sit down with industry experts to explore how their teamwork and collaboration transform ideas into unforgettable destinations. I hope it inspires you to see the world through a brand new lens, one story at a time. Join us as we celebrate the visionaries who make the impossible possible. Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of the League of Extraordinary Storytellers. Can't believe 9 episodes already. Been a lot of fun. I've had so many great conversations with friends, colleagues, and professional experts in this industry. Today, my guest is no different. She's absolutely amazing. Spent a lot of time in Imagineering and has now transitioned into educating, which is near and dear to my heart. She does it in a university setting. I've done it through books and lecturing and other things too, but I'm really, really happy to welcome to the show MK Haley. Thanks for being here, MK.
Thanks so much for having me. It's really exciting. Thank you for making me think about some of these topics.
Well, I think that's really cool about a forum like this is that we're going along in our daily routines and we're doing, superhero stuff all day long. And sometimes when you just stop and step back, maybe you get a different perspective. So I'd love for you to introduce yourself and talk about the cool stuff that you've done in your career, just, some of the things that you're doing now. I know the audience would love to hear that.
Yeah, thanks for having me. MK Haley. I am a kid from Massachusetts. I had never been to a theme park in my life, nor had my friends, right? There was both a cost and a distance issue there. So sometimes I feel unworthy of being here, right? There are folks who have wanted to do this since they were 4. And I'm like, imagine what? So, so when I went to grad school in California, my university was invited to participate in a student design and development competition. And so that's how I got exposed to Imagineering, is through the Imagination student design competition they had.
Wow.
I was studying computer graphics. My graduating class, 1990, from UMass Amherst, were the first artists in the world to get a degree in computer graphics.
No kidding.
Computer scientists have been doing it for a while, but I'm all like, who art degree? Like, who's going to get a job there? So I'm like, computers, those might stick around. So if I'm going to study design, I should study computer design. And then from that, I rolled into grad school at Cal State LA. Again, a public, not famous design or university, but it gave me the perfect foundation, both of those programs, to do what I ended up doing in the future. So I started in theme entertainment as an intern. I was doing work at Cal State LA in real-time graphics in VR, which is kind of revolutionary in, the early 90s.
Right.
I got to do some artist in residence work with JPL right there in Pasadena. Again, just a fluke of location. And Imagineering was working on this little Aladdin attraction, VR attraction. So when they found me, John DeSantis was the lead at the time. And he's like, let me get this straight. You're an art major who can code on a Unix box? And I'm all, yep. And nicest interview ever. I started 48 hours later. So
Wow.
Most people talk about like a career ladder or a track. Mine did this, right? Things I did professionally, academically. I have a lot of volunteer service and industry associations and organizations that informed my next role. And I think that's the norm, I think, in our industry, is there's no straight line. You do a thing, you get good at it, that gives you an opportunity to do another thing,
Right.
So be sure that you get that, kids. It's not a straight line.
I love that.
It's a glorious goulash.
I've heard it described as a matrix organization, but I love the way that you described it. It's messy and it's really dependent on you as an individual to build these relationships and network. I look at your career and all the cool stuff that you've done. It's over 25 years with Imagineering. Is that right?
I was 28 years in Imagineering. Yep. Which is by far, that's
awesome.
An anomaly, right? The average Imagineer's career is 5 years because the project cycle is usually 3 to 5 years. But we tend to really celebrate longevity, which is not the norm, right? And so be prepared for the flexibility to jump to another role, another company. I had 19 bosses in those 28 years, so certainly a lot of change. And the idea that I worked at R&D was also very supportive of a career that long, because R&D supported everybody. So at any point I might be working on 20 or more little tiny projects in service to larger groups. Um, and that's a little unusual as well. And also just the exposure that gave me to so many different things, where other folks might be like head down on one particular project for a long time.
Yeah, I actually wanted to dig into that a little bit because, one of the hallmarks of the podcast that I'm working hard to stick to is to bring on individuals who are, of course, professional in their own right and what they focus on. But I really wanted to kind of showcase how people of varying backgrounds actually work together on a project. Like, how does a technical and a non-technical person work together, right, on a project? And when I find unicorns like yourself who have really been bridged across both of those and been successful on each side, the creative, the non-creative, technical, non-technical, and that always fascinates me, and that was one of the main reasons I was wanting you to contribute to the book as well. So can you talk a little bit about that? You have a pretty broad background just in Imagineering, and then of course you branched out into education, and you still have a broad footprint in what you teach.
Yeah, and part of that came from my undergraduate program, which was a BFA in fine arts, animation, real time animation. It was just starting. I was the first graduating class, and it was less tidy than formalized degrees are. So I had to take classes in computer engineering and computer science. I had to take a bus to Smith College, 40 minutes away once a day, for differential equations. So for
Oh, wow.
BFA student to be taking differential equations was kind of weird. I had to take large scale welding to understand 3D. So I'm like in the forest welding giant sculptures.
No
And
kidding.
yeah,
Wow.
and I wonder if now that the program is formalized, right? Because you go through X years of experiment and then like, yep, here's a degree. Um, I wonder if you still get that value that I got, because I was taking large format welding and math, and nobody liked us, right? The engineering students didn't like the artists in their lab, so we could only use it from midnight to 6 a.m. We had a key on a play school block in a locker. We had to get into the lab. When I went to grad school, we had a class that all MFA students had to take together. And wow, the other students didn't like me. I was told I was bastardizing art by using a computer.
Oh
And
my
I had to be
goodness.
very polite about that. Right? Okay. um,
Yeah.
and so just the fact that you're bridging these things either makes you super valuable, or like people are confused and resent you. I think that's not an issue now anymore. Less of an issue for sure, but maybe not even an issue as we've moved forward with these technologies. Um,
Yes.
but part of me did it because, I am a huge fan of liberal arts educations. I had to take anthropology. I knew how to do research when I showed up at Imagineering because I had to take anthropology.
Right.
I understood about world religions in English and presenting, and differential equations. So I'm a huge fan of the variety and the diversity of skill sets that gave me. I wasn't maybe great at those things, but I knew they existed, so that when I moved into them, um, and also just like having a lens on who are our guests, right? Like everybody is great about designing a thing they want to go to, but who is the
Right.
guest and who are you designing for, and how do you get that spectrum? For 10 years, seventh grade through college, I worked nursing homes and hospitals and private home health care. It paid very well. I could come home for Thanksgiving break, do 3 shifts, and still be at the dinner table, right? And I ended up
Right.
randomly being a subject matter expert in quadriplegic males, mostly Vietnam vets. A lot of women didn't like to work with
Wow.
them. You have to shave them, right? And other things. I wasn't going to med school, but I was doing it because it was very flexible and it paid $8 an hour in the 80s. That was great.
That is
um,
great money.
um, but like what I was stocking away in the back of my little newt brain there was accessibility, accommodations, making sure a wide variety of people could see and
Mm.
experience your universes. And like that was not on purpose, right? But um, if that is not part of your world, figure out how to get it, right? How do you make sure that different human lived experiences, different humans, different countries, cultures, language, ages is, how do you get them into your
Right.
design world? I look back at
It's
that
such
now.
a great perspective.
Not only did
Yeah.
I start saving for retirement when I was 15, because I saw stuff, but I got all these other skill sets, right? And so think like what other 15-year-old started saving for retirement, right? So figuring out if that's not part of your worldview, how do you get it? Really helps inform you to be broader. Now, the limit is I'm not a super deep subject matter expert. Mechanical engineers with a focus on robotics, right? They are world class at that thing. And I will never compete with them on that. Or folks who
Right.
have a very, very in deep design program. They're far better at me than rendering or whatever. So you need to pick and choose because we need all that. We need breadth and we also need depth. Don't presume that either one is right, though. Just do whatever you gravitate towards.
I think that's fantastic advice. And I mean, many of our audience members probably never equated high voltage and molten steel with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree program. But I think that is absolutely amazing because of all of the applications that you mentioned, how that helped you. One thing you didn't say, but I'm assuming you would say this, is that it gave you the ability to communicate in a variety of languages when you were
Yep.
on a project. So you could speak engineer and you could speak construction management, and you knew enough to be able to communicate and form at your own level, right where you were on a particular project. You formed a cohesion with the people that you worked with. Am I overstating
Yeah.
that, or is
No, that's
no?
actually perfect. It's very fluid. I remember we were setting up, we're doing a beta test of the Aladdin VR experience at Disneyland in the arcade there in Tomorrowland. And the Imagineering truck drivers had a very strict time window between when they loaded a truck, drove it, unloaded it. And so we had just gotten to Disneyland. We were ready to unload the truck and put it in the arcade. It's like 3 or 4 a.m. And they couldn't because they had hit their hour limit and they had to go home and go to bed. And I'm like, oh man,
Oh
I'm like,
man.
I'm here. And so, like, within the next week or two, the most delightful Vince Takis, I got my crane license and my forklift license so that I
That's
could.
awesome.
Yeah, I wasn't just like, oh, dang it. I figured out how I could fill that gap legally and professionally and safely. um,
Right.
and wow, team members are shocked, right? Like if they show up and I'm sweeping the place, they're like, "Well, that's not your job. You're the producer." I'm like, "Well, but Bob Iger's coming and it's a mess, right?" So just
Mm,
understanding what the soup to nuts is, and sometimes that lack of awareness of what the whole pipeline is. And it's hard to describe producer, which I've done quite a bit of, because there's no such thing as a degree in producer, right?
right,
Um,
right.
and I say they're the person that flies cover. They're the dome that protects you to do your thing, and they figure
Mm,
out everything else. Money, funding, schedule, lunch, right? Like, oh, there was a lightning storm and construction stopped for 2 hours. How do we? The designers shouldn't have to figure that out, right? The engineers shouldn't figure that out. Like, so the producer has to know all the working pieces to sort of provide that. Sometimes they do it too well and people don't realize they're doing it. So that's again goes to your point about communication. Because I now teach a portfolio best practices for personal and professional presentation, these issues are more obvious. And also, I'm doing a lot of research with Bloomberg and Forbes and Inc. magazine, and also psychiatrists and psychologists on how to tackle some of these challenges that are evergreen and also the ones that are very much happening right this minute in time. If
right.
you look at between May 1st of 2024 and October 1st of 2024, 65% of employers in America across all industries fired an intern or an entry level hire because they're like, we're just done with your nonsense. Like, we are no
Wow.
longer tolerating, and it has nothing to do with technical proficiency. It's communication skills and perceived lack of professionalism. Those are easy to fix, right?
Yeah, that's a staggering statistic.
Mhm.
I know
Yeah.
we will talk in more detail about that, and you have a lot of great advice for our audience. One thing I wanted to ask you, because we've been talking, and you beautifully blended together your Imagineering experience with education. And one of the questions that I had was, from that personal experience yourself of moving from your professional career in Imagineering through to teaching, educating students who will eventually work in this industry. What do they need to succeed on all the things that we talked about? Now, I know that's going to lead us into another bigger conversation, but I'd love to kind of get your perspective and start there.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon to many industries, right? Our industry is unique in several ways. The biggies are communication skills, and you can wrap networking under that, right? And uh, I have students who refuse, who are like, "Give me 0 on this project. I refuse to connect to a professional." I have a pick a pro. By the way, we have a very mentory industry. We have about 100 folks who routinely talk to my students. Um, and then others who are like, "How come you didn't ask me?" I'm like, "Because you're a vice president and really busy." But okay, you're on the list. um, so communication, clear, succinct, professional communication, is a biggie. Collaboration is a biggie, and my students will sometimes misinterpret collaboration as a bunch of people working on. You do the first third of the presentation. That is not collaboration. That's a series of folks working in sequence. They will text
Right.
each other
Sounds
and
like delegation to me.
yeah, they'll text each other and think they had a meeting. Um, and so understanding what actual teamwork is, working
Hmm.
collaboratively, and it's hard, right? You lose time by being inclusive of all these ideas. There is natural conflict that arises. Um, but the solution isn't conflict avoidance, right? Because plowing through that conflict is where great stuff happens. I think
Yeah.
everybody gets
Yeah.
that 5 people working on a project, it gets done faster. But that's not the goal. The goal is something brand new gets invented because of those 5 different points of view. So figuring out how to work through that conflict is where the great stuff happens. The Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon University, ETC Press, they've got a lovely book on this called Creative Chaos, which is how to manage cross collaboration, multidisciplinary teams through some of that. Diversity is the single biggest indicator of success.
Nice.
It's also the single biggest indicator of conflict. So I'm working that. So your communication skills are key. Understanding what true collaboration is and committing to doing that, which means time and maybe little stops and restarts. And then also original research. It is so easy to make something very pretty real fast with digital tools right now. Everyone's like, done, instead of
Yeah.
iteration
Yeah.
or instead of doing informed research so that thing that you're pitching makes sense. And so those are my 3 biggies: informed research, understanding and practicing collaboration. And it takes time to get good at it, and communication. And communication, especially, just sounds so trite. Communicate, you won't get divorced. Communicate, your projects will be successful, right? But dang, it matters.
It does. I love that. It ties directly into my next question and your contribution to my book, where you were highlighting the importance of interpersonal skills.
Mhm.
You mentioned things like rapport and clarity and gratitude. And in your experience, what sets a truly great collaborator apart from someone who's just good at their job?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not technical proficiency. You could be the world's best at whatever, and I could absolutely not want to work with you, right? Like it is being willing to continue to develop your skills, right? You might not be the best whatever on the team, but if you keep trying and getting better, absolutely. The idea of potential, because I hope to have long-term relationships with you over time. Um, and also manners, like get off my lawn. I'm an old fart, right? But like manners, like say hello, say thank you, follow up. Um, Tell me what you're going to do and do it on time, right? Like these seem so fundamental, but they're key to success in anything, in particular our industry, which is naturally collaborative. Understanding this is a fast paced, not 9 to 5 world. If you are not willing to work weekends or overnight, this is not the place for you.
Right.
Right now, there's a huge push towards work-life balance, which like we're a little overdue for that, but it's sometimes to the extreme. Um, I had somebody call me from a lighting company that we work with. They had just hired a recent graduate, and at the end of the first, they were salaried, it's a salary position. At the end of the first week, they emailed and said, "I actually worked 42 hours this week, so I was wondering how do I apply for overtime?" And this person called and said, "I don't know what to say to them. What? Um, it's just not the nature of our business, right?" And theater students get this.
Yeah.
Like theater students have a lot of these skills innate. It's just not what accountants are taught or engineers, right? So um, understanding our industry through other professional lenses is what's going to help you thrive. And it's okay to self-select out, right? It's okay to say, I don't want to relocate or work third shift. Great. Do somewhere where that's not required. But if you're interested in this industries, those are some of it's called the BFQ, bona fide qualification. A bona fide qualification is that
Mm.
will be dirty some days. You will work late hours. You will work overseas. You will have to learn specs for different states and different countries. And you could be a plumber, right? That's a great job. But you could also make interactive
Yep.
fountains, water through pipes, right? It's just more fun to do it where we do it.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really appreciate the fact that all of that experience that you have in the industry, you bring as an educator, which is not just the technical skills, as you said, but it's the soft skills. And there's so many students, at least that I've interacted with, and I really enjoy that actually, helping the next generation or future generations to really understand the environment they're getting into, right? And exactly as you said, this is not a 9 to 5 industry. And there may be weeks you're pushing 50 hours, maybe 60 hours, and you're traveling a couple of weeks out of the month, or you're living overseas. But then other times on other projects, it could be more like a 9 to 5, for a period of time, and
And it's also
just
huge
having
to have
that flexibility.
when you may work, right? I tell students, and I've told them this for 30 years, presume you only work 8 months a year, and that's how you live. That's how much money you have for rent and movies and your car. Um, and if you do work 12 months, great, sock that into retirement. And if at the end of how many years, great, you're ahead of yourself because you've retired. But if you presume that you'll work 12 months a year times X years, you're going to get in a hole you can't get out of, and that's
Yeah, so
heartbreaking. Is if
smart.
you can't do what you want to do because of this hole. There's also these big old brushes that paint entire generations, and we tend to work with rock stars, right? Like problem kids are rare in the world that we work in. Um,
Yeah.
but even the rock stars are entering a universe where their whole generation has a reputation. And sometimes they need to overcome that, get out of that hole that they didn't dig for themselves. Are you familiar with the current chat on the Gen Z stare? That's that's the
No,
last
please
that's the
tell us.
last month's chitty chat. Google it. It's all over the place. Um,
Gen Z stare. Okay.
Gen Z stare, and that's outrageous because um, it feels disrespectful, it feels detached, or it feels like the Gen Z employee or service provider or whatever thinks you're stupid. And adults will say it just looks like they're loading. Like, what the heck did you just say? Um, and if you ask psychiatrists, they'll give one reason for it. If you ask business owners, they'll give another reason for it. If you ask Gen Z, they give a third reason for it. Kind of none of those reasons matter, right? If you're a professional in an environment, get rid of the Gen Z stare. And the Gen Z stare is just as simple
Right.
as not saying hello. Um, when somebody goes up to order coffee, not greeting them. And some of the
Right.
students are like, it's performative. I'm not on theater. I'm like, yeah, no, it's not performative for basic manners. Again, like, I guess I'm an old fart here on that, and who knows what it'll be next month. But this past month,
Right.
the Gen Z stare is what we're all obsessed with. Um,
Very
s-
interesting.
yeah, so just keep your, if you don't know what those reputation or trends or stereotypes are, ask somebody. Like as I had said, we this is a very mentory industry. Um, Folks across all levels are really happy to talk to you and provide you best practices and resources. And so just ask, which is again terrifying for students who don't want to talk to other humans, but like those that do get
Yeah.
a lot out of it.
No, it's a really great point. And the point that you're making about there are technical skills, there are soft skills, or what we would call hard skills, soft skills, or
Yes.
interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, all of those things that they don't really. I haven't found that a lot of universities teach that,
Yeah,
and
no,
a
they
lot
don't.
of in a lot of homes they don't teach that, right? But that is how you get hired. If you've got two very good candidates, each with fantastic resumes, that interview and that individual who shows a higher emotional intelligence, adaptability, the ability to learn. I don't know that, but I learn very quickly and I'm really curious. I play well with others. I don't run with scissors. These kinds of things, that's what gets you employed. And that's what
Yeah,
keeps you employed.
people are asking, who do I want to sit next to for 40 hours a week? Right. And
It's a
it
good
is a
point.
person with potential who is a hard worker. But there's also this trend. It's called self-evaluative words. You can't say I'm a people person unless you follow it up with an example. Because that's like those are fluffy words, hardworking, great attitude. Like there's no meat there. So you have to follow that up with a real world example because there's
Right.
no job posting that says looking for a hardworking people person, right? I'm looking for a 3D modeler with an expertise in low polygons for real time games, right? Like so, be as specific as possible. Talk about what you do and then maybe how you do it with that example as context. Um, and
That
we
fits.
are in an industry that both skews super high on social disorders. So in many ways we're more empathetic towards that. But that is a reality, and so work on that if that's a skill. Many universities have great workshops and programs to help with that. Um, and we're also an industry that because it's project based, it is these relationships. And if there's no class for professionals or students, right? Join a club, right? There's plenty of places to get both work examples and this experience on teams, communication skills, project managing through other
Hmm.
avenues. I'm a huge advocate of join any association. I don't care if it's 4-H or the Bread Bakers of America, which is a real group by the way. Um, they have a conference twice a year. So
It's good. I love bread, so it's
yeah,
perfect.
who made that whole place smell so good. But the idea that you have a like-minded group of folks who align with your professional interests, that's just going to make you better equipped, off exposure to more cool things. So clubs and associations, and sometimes it's hard to see that payoff immediately. It's very expensive, right, to fly to a place and get a hotel with six of your best friends, but you see that impact over years, both you personally, what has the value been to you, but also the impact you have, right? So you mentor folks coming up. You tell them about your program, and a high schooler might want to come. So that does take a bit of a longer range vision to see the payoff. That wow,
Yeah,
is it worthwhile? And you and I have both learned that.
absolutely. This goes right into my next question, which is you stress the importance of understanding what each teammate needs. Now, that just even that statement is big because that assumes that somebody's looking around, cognizant of other members on their team, and interprets what those teammates need. But your statement is that whether that need is communication, data, empathy, but being aware not only of yourself but of your teammates. How do you help teams become more self-aware and
Yeah,
responsive to those differences?
one of the first things I do in the first or second week. By the way, there's no scientific validity to this whatsoever. I make them all take the Myers Briggs INTJ. And just to plant in
I'm
their head,
I'm ENTJ, so how's that? That's pretty
but
cool.
um, just to plant in their head, oh my goodness, there's other working styles. Like it didn't even occur to me that some folks prefer email over in person or whatever. So just like the idea that there are preferred working styles, particularly in the workforce, you don't get a choice, right? If your boss communicates over email, you better figure out how to answer email. But if you're on a team and you're just sort of figuring this out, one of my most interesting aha moments, I was teaching at Florida State and they were shocked at what everybody in America ate for Thanksgiving. We were doing a lecture on international design, both designing for overseas and also designing to accommodate guests, international guests in America. And in their head, Thanksgiving is what their family made, and their family made what the Pilgrims made. And that's not true at all, right? And so I had a map of the most popular Googled Thanksgiving dish by state. Now nobody's Googling potatoes. We all know how to make that, right? And they in like this
Right.
aha moment of, oh my goodness, other people had different traditions, really opened them up to sort of this wider range. Um,
Cool.
so an awareness is the first thing, and understanding that try and accommodate. Like, somebody tends to prefer to stay later, and somebody like accommodate where you can, but don't expect that accommodation in the workforce. And also, like, how do you communicate that without being seeming combative or like not a team player? So I didn't invent, I walked into a room, it was 10 students, which was too many for a team. Half was doing the digital part of an experience, and the half was doing a physical build. It was a 2-story booth they were constructing. And there are 10 of them around this one conference table having a very heated debate. And I'm all like, what's happening, guys? And they were arguing over whether or not something was a right angle. And I'm like, okay, it is.
Oh,
How did we get here? Right? Like how did this happen? And it was,
right.
all right, the construction people thinking the design people were saying something that they didn't have expertise in. And I would say something to you that felt rude, and my friend was offended. So then they would on my behalf. So these weird bombs, and it just build up. So I brought in soccer cards, yellow and red cards. And I'm like, during your daily, scrum meeting or your weekly longer meeting, when there is a little, just put a yellow card. Don't stop the meeting. Keep going, but like just put a little yellow card on the table. If there's an egregious fault, like put the red one, shut that down, and like have a conversation.
Nice.
But they were shocked at the end of an hour-long weekly meeting how many yellow cards were on the table, whether that was passive aggressive or true or whatever. I'm like, all these are little speed bumps in the process. And so again, just that awareness of how
Right.
often it was happening sort of helped get past it. And it's not accusatory, right? It's just like, well, that was weird that you said that. I didn't understand that. Um, and then I do the activity where how we need 30 models of birds, 3D models. How long will that take? But you write that down. You don't say it out loud. You write, or you throw a card down. One person says 5 days. Another person says a week. Another person says that'll be done in 3 weeks. And they're all right. If you had said that and the smart guy in the room shouted the answer out and be like, yeah, no, 5 days. But what it means is 5 days is 8 times 5, 40 hours. A week, business week, same, right? That'll be done in 3 weeks is the person who realized Christmas and New Year's are in that window. So it's still going to take 40 hours, but it won't be delivered till the end. And so just sort of like wiggling those sorts of communication tools into best practices, everybody gets the actual end of day. When is that? Midnight or 5 p.m.? Who's coast? Um, and those simple little things really help. And also like, whoa, we got that wrong. Right. And so admitting when it doesn't go well, having
Yeah.
a conversation about how to move forward, which is all very, very hard, but it sure does pay off once it becomes habit.
It's fantastic. I mean, we're talking about collaboration, and I do that with most all of actually, I think with all of my guests, because that's kind of the core of this. How do we work together and communicate and collaborate? And it inadvertently comes down to a discussion of soft skills, of interpersonal skills, and I love what you teach, how you teach that is really really cool because we haven't even talked about the technical aspects of computer design. We haven't talked about any of those things, and you've really leaned very heavily into these interpersonal skills, communication, and everything. And I love that. I was going to ask you one last question in this realm of collaboration. You mentioned in the book the ability for teams to distinguish between must-haves and nice-to-haves, and in the project environment, things rarely go as you plan, right? One of my favorite quotes is from Mike Tyson, who basically says everybody has a fight plan until you get punched in the face, and that's sort of the way projects go, right? So,
Yep.
how do you distinguish between those two things?
Um, a little bit of a cheat in academia is we only have a 16-week semester, 15 weeks of classes, 1 week break, and we have no money, right? So, like, you could, I mean, your idea is great. Like, that is phenomenal. We don't have the time or money or the skill in the class to do it. So, that is actually a nice cushion because I'm not telling you bad idea. I'm just saying, wow, great idea. Here's why we can't do that.
Right,
And so
right.
that's a bit of a cheat for me. But also, you've got to do that early on, right? Because when I started teaching at Florida State, I put a week slush in for hurricanes. There was a hurricane every fall. It was a different week, right? But I knew there'd be a hurricane. I've never taken that slush week out. I've had two ice storms in Texas. Um, the first 2 weeks of 2022, Delta came back up, so we were online for 2 weeks and then back in person. Right? It's something. Um, and so defining early in the project what are your must-have versus your nice-to-haves aims your budget and your time. But if you wait till the end, then some of the cool stuff doesn't happen, right? If usually just after pitches, so maybe week 6 or 7 in a 16-week semester, we like, all right, this is all awesome. One of my students, by the way, wear a helmet when you skateboard, bashed his head skateboarding in a dorm on a door frame, and had massive
Oh gosh.
concussion and memory issues. He was the guy who was going to build our stuff. He was a great architect and a furniture maker. All right, what's plan B? Um, and we had a plan B, right? We always like putting all your eggs in Peter's basket was pretty risky. Um,
Right.
but we had already talked about what if the shop goes down? What if we don't have access to it? All Peter bashing his head on a door frame was never one of the variables. He's fine now. He's lead designer for the Austin Children's Museum. But that's harder,
Oh, very cool.
especially when you work with a giant company. You're like, we have all the money in the world. So some of those restrictions can be a little more challenging to put into place. But you have to. Right now, our biggest challenge that keeps throwing the wrench in our works is climate change, right? What happens when Burning Man floods? What happens when
Right.
there are 23 more days this summer in Orlando that are going to be unbearably hot? So, like, guests are choosing to not like how do you either provide comfort to those guests or how do you provide alternative options? Because if those guests decide to go somewhere else, they may never come back. Um, and so that might
Right.
be, you know, uh, budget time and what is the latest and greatest. Terrorists are really impacting our industry. The folks at B Morrow did a really lovely presentation up at Gaylord in Dallas. They did a phenomenal installation themed around Chinese lanterns. Um, they had to get it on a boat and out from China. Um, they got it out 11 hours before the deadline for the tariff. It would have gone up $1 million. The cost of their steel to get in a boat and go overseas would have been up $1 million. So whatever it is, ice storm, gator attack, right? There's all these
Right.
variables, and you are less panicked and have feasible solutions if you're like, right, this isn't where anyone wanted to go, but here we are. And that's your leadership, right? That comes from leadership from the top down.
It's really thinking through everything and
Mm-hmm.
having that knowledge and experience to think that through. When I read what you had submitted for the book, what where it brought me was in what creatives hate to hear, and that is value engineering, right? And the idea of if you have a really good understanding of must-haves and nice-to-haves,
Mm-hmm.
and your story is really locked in, then it certainly makes navigating those cost mitigations. It makes that a lot easier on the team and
Mm-hmm.
a lot easier on the final experience that you deliver because you've really thought a lot of that through and you know what your priorities
Mm-hmm.
are.
And you're sad about it. It's
That's
okay to
awesome.
mourn it, right? We're having an
Yeah.
interesting challenge right now, and so I'm serving on the conference committee for SIGGRAPH. I'm in charge of the real time live venue for next year, so I'm shadowing the gentleman ahead of me. It's in Vancouver this year. Um, from 2020 on, it was virtual for 2 years in a row, and then it was like sort of hybrid. Now we're kind of going all in person at a convention center. That's the value of the thing, going in person with a few like the keynote session, a few featured things online. And so in February, I said, okay, what about our contributors who are going to be there in person demonstrating their stuff who can't get a visa? That's an issue now, right? The entire Venezuelan Little League team was denied visas to come to the Little League World Series. And so they're denied that opportunity. And my team kind of poo pooed it. They're like, no, that's Canada. It's not America, right? Nobody's going to have a problem getting a visa to Canada. Um, and they have. Like I fly out in a week from today to go to the conference in Vancouver, and so far two of our presenters have said I can't get a visa. knowing that we had, and I'm like, that is not their fault. And so it switches, because originally the argument was the rules. The rules are you got to be there in person or you don't get to present. That's not fair. I accidentally swapped the conversation to what do we owe our attendee? Like if this thing went through a jury process and we decided it was awesome and our attendee needs to see it, we need to figure out how they can see it. And we've already got the virtual part set up. And so we can say, due to travel restrictions or whatever, this person's not allowed to be here in person, but here they are. Um, that's an
Right.
example of something you need to get out ahead of instead of denying them the opportunity to present and denying your audience the opportunity to see the cool stuff. It would be
Absolutely.
harder if that technology wasn't
That
already
is amazing.
like we've already got cameras there. It doesn't need to be live, right? That's very expensive. You can record it and post it up in an hour.
Totally. Totally. I'd love to switch to more talking about new tech and tools in the industry. And I know that that's a space that you work a lot in. And you do talk about the importance of adaptation, right? Adapting to automation, AI, interactivity,
Yeah.
and of course, you've shaped curriculum across multiple institutions. How do you determine which tools or tech are essential versus just, jumping onto a trend?
Mm-hmm. And wow, some of these new techs, people are mad about it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Some are easy to embrace, some are very angry. Um, and so it's kind of a multi-phased approach, right? Like one of it is, oh, it is super trendy. I have an obligation to make you aware of it, right? The year of the academic year of 24 to 25, UT decided the year of AI, like whatever that means across the entire campus, right? So I had an obligation to include that as part of my lecture series, but just like a lecture or a little workshop or something, the university gave us verbiage to put in our syllabus, legal verbiage about how it would be included or not, right? There was the you can do it this way, you can
Right.
do this way, you can't do it at all. My students aren't writing essays and such, so copyright is not an issue. Pulling copywritten IP is, right? Like somebody's, I don't want to see your very best Scooby Doo pitch, right? You don't have any right to do that. So that's where some of the conversations going, but they were still very mad. So at the end of spring of 24, riots, Discord conversation erupt, like a lot of swear words about AI. You're putting us out of business.
Oh,
Like whoa, whoa,
oh
whoa.
man.
But like that, it exists, right? It is the reality of our industry. People are using it. So in the fall of 24, I had Michael Libby lecture over the Zoom. Michael Libby runs a company called World Builder, which is missing a lot of its
Yeah,
vowels. World Builder.
he's great.
Yeah, and I explained to him what the challenge was. First of all, cool tool, year of AI, they need to be on board, and also they're angry. And he understood his audience beautifully. He gave a great. He's like, yeah, that's not the stuff that's naughtiness. Like, don't do that. Here's how you can actually use it to be productive and inform legally, like safely, like, and also here's why it's a help. And so then the students began to accept it as not the enemy and as a useful tool. And by the end of that, 90-minute class, I have a whole subset of students who were designing a haunted house. They understood how to design AI powered characters in that house, right? And so it became a tool. I also had luck with it when I said, AI is looking at your resume, right? Like whether you like it or not, it is. And
Right.
so
It's a reality.
I had the class pass their LinkedIn profile and their resume through AI and see the feedback that it was giving. And like you could be mad about it, but that's what the recruiter's seeing. Right. And so you need to make decisions about keep it the way it is or change it. So then we're moving into this year, actually integrating it into classes more like that example I gave about the resume. It's not just like, here it is, and you should be aware. It's like, here's how it's impacting you, and here how you can use it safely and legally. So for integrating new text, it's a bit of it's a process, right? Like a lecture or a workshop,
Sure.
a whole class. Most universities are doing great, like weekend long or shorty classes on it. So you can aim students at that if they're interested. But a lot of one of the biggest things leadership can do, particularly in industry and out of the classroom, is teach me how to use it. I don't know if you remember in 1994, Imagineering went from paper time cards to a system called TESS. We had to use an
I
online system.
remember.
Wow, were people
Still
mad?
scarred.
Yeah, it was weird. And then, oh my God, when the entire digital workflow thing happened for time cards and expense reports, um, people were mad because it was very scary and it was a new skill. I think if you just take a step back and train me how to do it so I feel confident in this new tool, then I'm more likely to use it and get on board with it. And so if you just say AI is a thing, good luck. Um, um, Actually, like giving you skill sets and then a few wins in using that technology, more likely to embrace it moving forward.
That's great. I mean, most of my guests and I talk about that because there's always a different perspective on how you can use it and how you can implement all new tech into your own personal workflow, or how you're seeing it integrated in the classroom or integrated on the project in a professional environment. So I think that discord where necessary is important, as long as it's done professionally and well, right? That's how we have this discussion of how to use this. Where I've seen a lot of discussion taking place is on the, of course, on the creative side, development side, from an experience design perspective. And you have these great pros like Louis Alfieri, right, who's really on that cutting edge and talks a lot about use cases. And I really love, to me, that's really important. I think that's what students, and even old dogs like myself, who should, or who are out there right now, open your mind to it, and start to find out where it can help you. What's interesting is my background did quite a lot of thematic painting in my early years, and I remember hearing from all of the old timers that how people were very upset when sprayers came out, paint sprayers, because you may remember, you may know, in the olden days everything was by brush, right? And then the rollers came in, and the brush people got upset, and then the spray tech came in, and the roller people got upset. It's kind of the same thing with technical advances everywhere, wouldn't you say? When tools get better.
Yeah, yeah, and legit, like the fear is, well, I'm going to become obsolete. Probably better get trained up on the new thing, right? I mean, there are, if it eclipses whatever you're doing, right, there are opportunities in that new space. So figure out how to graciously move in that direction. And there's a lot of times people will put up walls. Absolutely not. Virtual interviews are a thing now. I don't know if you've experienced this pleasure. You are
Have
talking
not.
to a webcam, and the questions scroll across the screen. Particularly for entry level internships, like Universal's hiring 3,000 people, right? Like they'll go through this process first. You get two
Wow.
shots if you don't like your answer. But the system knows that you took two shots, and you only have like 2 or 3 minutes to answer it. What? Like, how do I train a student to do that? And so I
Wow.
did have to. And like, silly, the system is looking at your eyes. Like, I'm looking at your eyes, but my camera's here, right? And so there could be a perceived disconnect. And so I'm telling my students, like, if you've got notes for your interview, don't put them here, because if you put them there, the system is going to detect and flag you for disengagement. I'm like, tuck
Wow.
it in the top of your laptop here, which of course you can't see, which as you said. But then if I'm looking at them there, so because like you have to evolve to fit these, and if you're like, absolutely not, great, then you are self-selecting out of the process. I'm not saying I
Boy.
like this. I'm not even
Yeah.
sure it's legal, right? Like, because
Right.
if
Right.
what if I have a lazy eye? But like that's just the way it is, right? And either you play that game or you don't get to play. Um,
It's so funny that you brought that up, because look, I'm never podcasted before, right? I don't do a lot of, I ended up doing a lot of stuff on camera personally, but I'm never really comfortable with it. If I look at your eyes, I'm looking here. This is me
yeah,
looking at the screen, looking at your face. If I have notes which are built into my program, I look at my notes right here, which I'm still not looking in the camera. So I have to force myself to look in the camera, right? So just exactly what you're saying.
weird.
So people feel like you're engaging with them. Yeah,
Right.
it's
Also,
crazy.
we're very aware of our hair, right? Like for the first time in history, we're looking at a mirror for hours a day. We never did that. That's weird. I don't know what's going on over here right now.
It's true.
Um, so it's
I
adapting to
love
whatever
it.
these new things are. Um, you know what? One of the things I noticed, I did a lecture the other day for a 6-week game jam. And so there are computer science students from across the country. Most of them had internships, right? So this was an evening lecture. Only one person had their camera on, and it was the host, who's a professor at UC.
Really?
I'm like, hey, actually, glad we started. Like, if you know employers' biggest issue is lack of professionalism and engagement, like one simple thing you can do is turn your camera on, right? The only other person who turned the camera on was the TA. 100% of the other participants, 65, chose not. And I'm like, okay. Over half of them then quickly typety type put an AI bot on the meeting and left entirely. And there's a little thing across their square that says, so the camera's off and there's a thing that says AI. And I'm like, the meeting's already being recorded. And I'm like, you have just double disengaged me. And I'm like, that is great way to get to the bottom of the list. No, if you're using AI during a class lecture to get notes for you, fantastic, right? Yay, you for using that tool. But just be aware of perception of engagement. And and then when you ask questions, I'm like, you chose to self-select out of that meeting, and we could have handled that in front of the group, and you didn't. So I was doing
Wow.
Nate Naverson at Themed Attractions magazine does this really lovely
Yes.
student review. Started during COVID when students weren't having internships, and he wanted to give them professional feedback. Still going strong.
Yes.
Um,
Great
so
program.
yeah, so we started up a meeting, and immediately one student says, "Hey," he goes, "I am so sorry, my camera's off. I have a terrible cold, and nobody needs to see that." And I'm like, fantastic. Like, not only am I not mad that your camera's not on, I'm delighted. Good choice. But it's just, again, it's just communicating what's going, or I'm like, I'm in my car and I'm only listening to you and it's inappropriate to have the camera on. I'll be there in 5 minutes. It's just about communicating
Yeah.
intent, because if you leave it up to anyone else to presume, they're going to presume the worst.
Yeah, yeah. I had not heard an example like that, and you saw me with my mouth hanging open, and I was so shocked. The only in my own personal journey, especially since Disney, the only time I've actually ever encountered that is with clients in Saudi Arabia. I go through whole meetings with a black screen, and it's just my face there. I'm the only camera that's on, and I'm just kind of ho hum listening to myself. But I haven't seen that with students or anything. That's amazing.
And
Wow.
it's interesting. I
What?
feel extra bold when I'm there specifically to be a mentor. I'll be like, hey, finger waggy. If it was a professional meeting, I would never presume to correct a peer, right? But I wonder why. Like, I am reacting to you differently if you've chosen not to engage. But that's one of the
Right.
nice things about education is you can be all like, "Hey, how about this instead of that?"
It's such a great perspective. I was just going to say, I can't believe our hour is almost over. I had just a couple of questions. I'd love to talk about your thoughts on the future of in-person entertainment, right? Our industry, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your answer because you've spent time in the industry and now you're educating. You really have had this influential role of shaping both academic and professional sides of the industry. So I just love big open question. What excites you the most about where we're heading as an industry?
Right. They're like,
And then maybe
this
you can tie
good
in.
luck getting me to simmer down on this, right? Because um, when I was at R&D at Engineering, I part of my group, ATR, was called Advanced Technical Research, was keep people informed. Like, oh, somebody invented a blue LED. Woohoo! Right? Like, so every week I had these 11 emails at the bottom of my screen. Terrible habit, by the way. And I just would fill it with, oh, robotics, display systems. And on Friday afternoon, boop, I would hit send and they would all go off. Something happened. My machine rebooted, whatever. We restart on Wednesday. And so then Disney did a white label beta test on an app called Yammer, which is kind of like corporate Facebook. And so then we could set up groups where instead of me mailing robotic stuff, it could go to sort of this platform and you could go back and look at the archives quite easily. So that was great. We had a whole bunch of PhD students in our Disney research lab, and one was leaving, and he says, "Oh, like what I'm gonna miss most is MK's Goodies, which is now the name of my punk band, MK's Goodies." And those were the emails, like the updates. And I said,
Nice.
I'm like, none of this is secret, right? I compiled this on Disney Time. And so I asked Bruce Vaughn, who was our leader at the time, I'm like, can I share this like to students? He goes, oh, absolutely. So then I set up a Facebook stream and a LinkedIn stream. By the way, the kids are not using Facebook anymore. And I presumed they would be mirrored. They're not. Like the LinkedIn one is very professional, very a lot of job posty. The Facebook one is very fun. Like if you want an update on popcorn buckets or the Savannah bananas, that's where you go. Um,
Nice.
in
Nice.
part because I wanted to keep our industry was very secret for a long time. And so what we can do in the future of our industry, you called it in person. I call it dimensional. There's physical stuff around us is the differentiator. And there's a lot of
Hmm.
online stuff you do before, during, and after, but like the differentiator from video games is that we're building worlds with real bricks and fire and sparks and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so I've
Physical.
sort of, yeah, physical places. Um, so the accidental benefit of me running these news feeds is, wow, I read a lot of great stuff and I share a lot of great stuff, and we're exploding. Sports, right? Aquariums, zoos, libraries, pop-ups. I mean, some of the amazing pop-ups at Comic-Con last week in San Diego. Um, our universe is vastly experienced. School, like educational things, orientation, like our industry, this idea of a highly immersive physical built space where people have experiences together is only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. One differentiator I have, I've tried to make this a thing, like maybe get a t-shirt, nobody's on board. If you are a zoo, an aquarium, or a museum, you have a different obligation to your audience than fantasy based, and that is credibility, right? And so I say, make me aware, make me care, give me a call to action. That's something that I do after, which extends the experience and my impact. Um, that's a huge deal. And I like to use the Living Seas Pavilion at Epcot as a great example. Make me aware. Fish. I see fish. I'm aware of fish. Make me care. Right after that first dark ride, you go and you meet Crush. You have a little conversation with Crush, who gets me aware of what he eats, what his favorite friends are, and also don't pollute in the ocean because it impacts him. Give me a call to action. Once you leave that space, that building is full of subject matter experts who will talk to you. They'll let you feel shark skin. They'll talk about conservation efforts. And so that full cycle is where we can have an impact, right? Like where we
Mm.
matter. Randomly, and this is a whole other hour-long conversation, I've become the only creative consultant to the Worldwide Santa Forum right now. And the idea
Right.
of, right, the idea of kindness and impact, um, it really obviously resonates with those boys. And it's really interesting to see just how slight little changes or efforts matter to hundreds and maybe thousands of people, because COVID impacted the Santas as well. Nobody's sitting on Santa's lap at them all anymore,
Right.
and they're
That's a good
thriving
point.
because
Yeah,
these
that's a
60
really
to
great
80 year
point.
old men jumped onto technology. They revolutionized their experience, and they're not just surviving, they're thriving. Yeah, so I'm
That's
super
awesome.
thrilled at not just the expansion of no brainer themed experience and cruises, right? But also all these other universes that are suddenly becoming very aware of immersion and storytelling in these spaces.
That's fantastic, and I love what you're describing is a lot more. And I'm not throwing shade on him. I'm not intending to
Mhm.
throw shade, but just projecting a piece of artwork on the wall or something. That's not what you're talking about. A really immersive kind of experience. I love that. So go
But
through it
I
again.
am
Make
talking
me
about that a
care,
little bit. I have make me care, make me aware, make me care,
aware.
give me a call to action. Tell me about it. I wish I could make the third one rhyme, but I can't. So make me aware, make me care, give me a call to
That's great.
action. Yeah. One interesting brawl I've had about those projecting Van Gogh on the wall things, I will fight for that. My friends who are art history PhDs are like, no, it's not the artist's intent. I'm like, I don't care what gets a 6 year old interested in Van Gogh. If it's an umbrella or a mouse mat or a toy, right? Like I'm all about the inclusion and the exposure. If I can't afford to go to Europe and see the thing on the wall, should I not see it? And I have art history friends who are like, absolutely. And I'm like, okay. And we come from very different worlds. And my world is about exposure and inclusion. And there is certainly a place for the projection on the wall, but there's also ways to do that where it's more meaningful.
Yeah, yeah. You said it right. That's what I was going for. Can we make it more meaningful? We have enough very talented people now that can tell stories through experiences that go beyond just the technology, or one dimension of technology is the point that I guess I was trying to make,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
dovetailing with what you were saying as well. Awesome. Well, I was going to go into, if you have just another couple of minutes, you work quite a lot with professional organizations like CGRAPH, you mentioned
Yeah.
TEA, and of course the TEAAS, the Academic Society. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you're so passionate about that, and why others should be?
Yeah.
interested and involved.
I've become, quite the cheerleader. So you start participating in these organizations for completely selfish reasons. My first SIGGRAPH conference was in 1989. It was in Boston. I lived in Boston at the time. A lot of students slept at my house. My mom would make them a nice breakfast. We'd all get in the bus and go every morning. And it was free
Oh,
as a
that's
student
awesome.
volunteer. It was $5,000 in 1989 to go to this conference in Boston. And I didn't have that, right? And so by being a student volunteer, I got to go for free. And also, luckily, it was in my backyard. Um, and then you go and you're like, whoa, there's some really amazing things here. One of the most impactful things was me realizing watching some of the Pixar Listerine commercials. They did some gummy lifesavers, squishy lifesavers, and Listerine ads. I'm like, I can't do that. Like in a year, I'll have a degree in this field, and I can't do that. So then that inspired me to go to grad school, and I was surrounded by people who could advise me on what programs to go to. Right. So it's sort of, one thing leads to another, needs to another. So I was a student volunteer for several years. Four strangers to a room, 20-hour days, and it was great. Free t-shirts. And then you roll into more professional positions and realize that the value that others gave you, you can now return, right? So it's like a bit of an obligation of, all right, I've had a job for 3 or 4 years now. I will help you. So it's a different sort of relationship. And then when you get a little further in your career, you start contributing. I'm going to give a lecture or write a paper, which is another part of your personal and professional development. Meanwhile, you're surrounded by really cool people, like-minded people who care about what you care about, who expose you to new stuff, people who wouldn't talk to you on the bus, right? Or if you walked into JPL, but at a conference like this, everybody's everybody's friend. So SIGGRAPH is Special Interest Group in Computer Graphics and Interactive Techniques. It's a bit of a research art in that, again, that melding of different disciplines. It's 51 years old. TEA is a Themed Entertainment Association, which tends to be the front half of our industry: design, construct, build, handover. And then that dovetails with IAPA, which tends to be the operations half of the universe. All three of those have really robust student programs, whether it's mentorship, Career Slam, IAPA does, ambassador programs, student volunteers. So you can
Yeah.
get discounted or free. You can meet cool people. The mentee that I have right now through IAPA is in his third year as a professional. So they're not all students, right? Different levels of professional achievement with different questions. And then the TEASS, which Peter Weischer started. How do academics in our industry get tenure, right? Like there are these very specific rules in every other industry. And so he started this association, which has now sprung off into a peer-reviewed journal, a once-a-year event. IAPA graciously gives us a room for free. Thank you, IAPA. So that's a bit of a twofer. You can go for the conference, and on Friday, sandwiches show up every year. I don't know who pays for the sandwiches, but they show up. And that's about, is there a core to our curriculums that we should all consider? And most folks are like, yeah, here's like what 60 to 70% of your curriculum should be. So we can all agree what a degree in this field is. And then the other 30% is what differentiates your university, right? Right now, there's 9 themed entertainment degrees that I know of, and about 100, 120 minors focused like track areas. And you tell me what you care about, and I'll aim at that program, right? Right now, there's not a whole lot of competition because they are very diverse in what they do. Jamie Gerauder over at Ringling has just started a high school summer program. And so I'm like, I like that I can aim you
That's
there.
awesome.
Um, yeah, and so all of these things, sometimes there's a crossover in which of your friends you see there, and sometimes it's new folks, but all of these just expose you to different folks. And so I just took a 4-year break from SIGGRAPH to be on the TEA board of directors. Learned a whole bunch of different new things. I just rolled back onto the SIGGRAPH committee, and I'm bringing that knowledge with me. And I'm bringing the knowledge from SIGGRAPH.
Nice.
I'm also teaching event management, and there's a lot of really great research out there right now about how conference attendee audiences have changed. Because I'm teaching that, I'm getting that research, and now I'm throwing that at SIGGRAPH. I'm like,
Nice.
did you know? They're like, oh my God, we didn't know that. And we're incorporating that. So, like, when I say that this is how we lead our lives, very much so, right? This informs that, informs this. I do this year, then that this next year. Um, but yeah, the participation in industry events, there's a cost, right? There's time to
Sure.
commit to a club or a conference and money. And so you got to figure what you're not doing in place of that. But wow, over time, it really matters. I mean, I was promoted to a job with Disney after they saw something I had done at SIGGRAPH. I was very young, and like I wouldn't have had that level of leadership experience at Disney. And but my boss, Bob Lambert, at the time said, "Wow, like you did this, you managed this many people in this budget. I'd like to have you on my team and bring that over." And so they do
Nice.
feed each other nicely as well.
I love the fact that you described it. Yeah, you didn't use this word; it's mine. But you just the way you described it is more of an ecosystem. It's the
Yeah,
industry, and then the association, and
I'm
then
going to
I love
steal
the way
that.
you just yeah, you describe this that one is informing the other and informs the other, and that's beautiful. Nobody wants to go to a this bloated accessory where it's a good old boys or good old gals club, right? You want to belong to an active, life giving, finger on the pulse of an industry, and I love that you described it that way.
And there's some there's a lot of moments. Got to prepare for that, and there's a lot of oh cool, I'm going to use that moments, and so very informative.
Nice. I love that. Thanks for being here and for bringing considerable experience and you've just really I love it because you've introduced a whole lot of thinking that I didn't have, I wasn't thinking of. So I love that. Love learning, and I appreciate that. If you don't mind, would you give the audience ways that people can get in touch with you or read some of the things that you've done?
Yeah, one nice way is just LinkedIn. And it's interesting. LinkedIn, MK, big M, little K, Haley, Haley. That used to be me. MK is an individual. But especially with the work I'm doing at UT, and particularly partnering 90 students a year with professionals, that's now professor at UT. It's no longer me as an individual. It's very much become a professional. That's a great way to reach me. And the publications part of LinkedIn is a lot of the lectures that I've given. You can click and see. You can see some of my Santa work. I've given in Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. They call our universe GLAM, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. And so there's I've done some lectures on that, which is a bit of a different take. Like, oh, that's right. Like, why aren't they more rolled into the U.S. sensibility about our interests? So LinkedIn is great. My email address that's listed there is an alias that follows me wherever I go. If I get another job, go somewhere else, like that contact will get to me. I do review about 400 resumes and reels a year. And I reviewed one the other
Wow.
day that was it was harsh. And I'm like, oh, they're gonna be so mad at me. And immediately they said, why has nobody else told me this? And I'm like, okay, phew, that went well. But like sometimes it's hard to feel about like this is confusing.
Yeah.
Why are you putting pink text on a red background? None of the links work. Um, uh, and so like you're not putting me out if you ask me to do that. I may not do it until I have a window to do it, right? Like I'm out of the country for um 9 days next week, enjoying Canadian snacks. Um, but I will get to it. So please, and also like once I give you feedback, like let's do a few and like, oh, I'm applying for this particular thing, which is in Europe. What's a CV? Yeah, so you can reach out to me through LinkedIn. That always gets to me. And also, like, ask stuff. I have several resources I've put together. I have MK's Big Ugly Giant Google Doc of Awesome Things, which is a big ugly database. What books should you read?
It's a great talk. It is.
Guess what I just added? Um,
Nice.
I have those two news feeds, LinkedIn and Facebook. I have a Google Drive full of academic research papers in our universe. You have to, it's crazy. Academia.edu is a repository for researchers. You have to either have had a patent or been a keynote speaker at a conference to access it. However, every single paper I have, the author's like, oh, yes, please share it. Like, I want people to see it. So if you're interested in that side of the universe, I have a big Google Drive full of hundreds of academic hardcore research papers in our
Very
industry.
cool.
Already did it. Happy to share.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being a guest on the league. It's been so amazing to have you. And yeah, it's going to be hard to top this season. Honestly, I'm thinking next season, who do I invite?
I I
It
could
was,
share my big I have a database of amazing industry mentors who want to work with my students. I should just give you the link to that. There's like
you
70
should. That would be
great
awesome.
people who are like, please let me help. And also like just to like shamelessly plug your book. There's a lot of great books out there. Like everybody should be reading The Experience Economy, the new version. That's the old one. Everybody should be reading Margaret Carrison's stuff on storytelling. Everybody should be reading Jesse Schell's stuff on game design and interactivity. These are nice. This is a manual, right? The chapter headings you have are kind of follow my syllabus. So obviously, I think you're brilliant. But it outlines how to do the thing. Some of these are great stories, like maybe told in hindsight, and they're great reading. They're fun. They're inspiring. But your book is very much a manual on how to do the thing, and that is much rarer. I kind of want to like plasticize it and take it on a construction site.
Wow, I'm so thankful. Thank you very much. We didn't have that organized before we started this, so thank you for that. When you mentioned Jamie and Greg at Ringling, that's the first university that's actually put it in order for books. So I'm just throwing it out there for consideration. Well, thank you so much for being a part of the show. I really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for joining. And stick around. Next month, we'll have episode 10 come out, and I know that you will love it as well. See you next time.
Thank you. Ciao.